why we might have seen her emerge as a frontrunner over the past few days, particularly when it comes to the Conservative Party and the Conservative membership. First of all, she was a Brexit supporter, and that is quite important. The way that the Conservative Party has shifted over the past few years, that brings in a lot of support behind her. The other thing is that although she served under Boris Johnson as a minister, she wasn't a prominent member. She wasn't sitting around the cabinet table going out and defending him during Partygate. So to some extent, she isn't tainted by the previous administration. The other thing is, though, that she also did not feature prominently in bringing down his premiership. And I think it's fair to say there's a bit of bitterness in Westminster among some MPs towards those who were prominent, who did resign and in the end bring down the Prime Minister. So she has those two things going in her favour as well. But look, now that she's a front runner, what we're seeing is she's much more in the spotlight, and now there is criticism being aimed at her. We heard from Lord Frost earlier today. He was the UK's Brexit negotiator. He essentially said that when he worked with her, he found her so incompetent, he actually asked for her to be moved on into another department. And to be honest, this is part of the cut and thrust of Conservative leadership races. There are also many people in Westminster that say that maybe Lord Frost wasn't that competent himself in the job that he did at that time. Another issue, though, for her is things that she has previously said on trans issues. She stood up in the House of Commons and said trans women are women. That has led some in the party to suggest that she's, if you like, the kind of woke candidate on the wrong side of the culture wars. And I've had a number of Conservative MPs say to me that that is a concern. They've also said, those supporting other candidates, that she just really doesn't have the experience that some of those do. But it'll be really interesting to see what happens today. Clearly emerging as a front runner, will she be gaining even more support over the next few days?
Yeah, it really is all about some momentum, isn't it? And I do think, as you were saying, Liz, that it felt like Penny Mordaunt, perhaps the candidate with the momentum yesterday. Will that be transferred today? Thank you very much for that analysis, Liz. Well, we're going to find out. The clock is ticking down.
Can I just say something? I did suggest you for a role, and I was very disappointed when you didn't get that. But it would have been improper for me to have pushed you or done something that favoured you in an abnormal way. I suggested you for the job. I was very keen for Kit to interview. I remember Kit interviewing. I asked him about it afterwards repeatedly, why he hadn't given me the job. And I was very disappointed he had. I remember. And I'm afraid one of the reasons he gave was he thought you were too friendly with me. No, I'm incredibly fucking busy. I tried to meet you the other day. Jesus fucking arsehole. I tried to meet you.
I have friends who are upper class, I have friends who are, working class, but I'm not working class, but I mix and match, and then I go to see kids from an inner city state school and tell them, to apply to Oxford and talk to them about
Questions the Prime Minister. I start. Questions the Prime Minister. I start with Robin Miller.
Mr. Speaker, from tomorrow.
Just sit down. Sit. Shut up a minute. What's he for? Come. Give me the word in. Order! Order! I say to the honourable gentleman, give me the seat. I will not tolerate such behaviour. If you want to go out now, but if you stand again, I will order you out. Make your mind up. Either shut up and get out. I warn the honourable member that if there's protesting carrying out, shut up a minute. Does somebody want to at once? Give me the names. Order! Order! Sit down, you want me in the future. I now warn the honourable members that if they persist in refusing to comply with my order to withdraw, I shall be compelled to name both of them, which may lead to them being suspended from the House. Right, names. To ensure that the honourable member complies. Can it? What's the names? I order! Shut up. Shh. Neil Hanby, I am now naming you and Kenny McCaskill to leave this chamber. Sergeant, deal with them. Deal with them. Deal with them. Just sit down. Out! No. Sergeant at Arms, escort them out.
Neil, you were just kicked out. What are you doing?
Well, it's a democratic outrage. We have a mandate for a referendum in Scotland. This is a Prime Minister who's distorting parliamentary democracy, who is denying Scotland its legitimate right to a referendum, and at the same time we face that Scotland is an energy-rich country and over half our people are going to be facing fuel poverty. It's time Scotland had the right to determine its own future, rather than having a future determined by a handful of Tory MPs and then by a handful of Tory members, none of whom have been elected in Scotland, and indeed no Tory Prime Minister has been elected in Scotland in my lifetime.
Could not just win this contest, but win a general election. If we do not win the next general election, all those opportunities and the vision that the British people had from us leaving the European Union will not be realised. We must win that election. I am your best shot at winning that election. I am the candidate that Labour fear the most.
Which has led to loath for decades, to deliver on Brexit and the opportunities it offers. And we need to win the fight for freedom at home and around the world. That is why I am putting myself forward for leadership of the Conservative and Unionist Party and of our great country. I will campaign as a Conservative and I will govern as a Conservative. I can lead, I can make tough decisions, and I can get things done. I am ready to be Prime Minister from day one. I have a plan to make Britain a high-growth economy over the next 10 years through bold supply-side reform. We will cut taxes, helping businesses invest in their future. We'll tackle the cost of energy and we'll control government spending. We will create tax, low regulation zones to attract investment in communities up and down our country, creating new hubs for innovation and enterprise. We have to level with the British public that our economy will not get back on track overnight. Times are going to be tough, but I know that I can get us on an upward trajectory by 2024. We can get there by delivering our promises, ensuring we're in the ground, people are in jobs, and money is being generated in local areas right across our country. I'm a loyal person. I'm loyal to Boris Johnson. I supported our Prime Minister's aspirations, and I want to deliver the promise of the 2019 manifesto. And what we need to do now is deliver, deliver, deliver. And I am the person in this race with the record of delivery. I've taken the tough decisions at the Foreign Office, at the Trade Department. I've got a fantastic team of people in my campaign team and more broadly across the party. And I want to go in from day one in Downing Street and make sure we deliver on the promises we set out in 2019.
Tom Tugendhat hat character in those live TV debates. If the candidates agree to do them, Rishi Sunak, if he agrees to do it, he might think, I've got to the final two if that's what happens. But let's see with that. But in terms of who would he be up against? Well, if you kept Suella Braverman in, for example, you would then have Kemi Badenoch, you would have Suella Braverman, and you would have Liz Truss, arguably all on the right of the party, or trying to appeal to a particular wing. So that gives Rishi Sunak a bit more space. But as I was saying, from a Rishi Sunak camp point of view, they are not apparently trying to, or that's what they're saying, trying to skew the votes. We'll see soon enough. But in terms of how does it break down in terms of the candidates that fall out, it has to be said that in terms of the different camps, it's not like all MPs who voted for Jeremy Hunt all go to Rishi Sunak because that's where Jeremy Hunt has gone. And likewise, Nadeem Zahawi, who in fact has said that he's not going to publicly endorse anyone, doesn't have any plans to do that at the moment. They will sort of splinter off into different groups depending on personal relationships, on their particular seat, who they think is, if it's not their preferred candidate, which second choice might serve them well, relating to their constituency, for example. So it's not clear where they all go, but certainly I think it is fair to say at this point in the race that the right vote is split between three candidates. That's Truss, Braverman and Badenoch, and if one of them gets knocked out, might Liz Truss hope to pick up more votes from the Braverman camp? She really needs a bit of momentum, as we were talking about, as Sam's been talking about earlier today. She's on 50, and all of the questioning at her launch this morning that I attended was all about whether or not she was stalling and whether or not having the tacit backing of Boris Johnson, and you can see that in terms of the MPs coming out for Liz Truss, the cabinet ministers at least, whether having that backing is actually a kiss of death and it's actually a block on her with a parliamentary party that really wants to move on from the Johnson era. So it'd be interesting to see too about Liz Truss. She'll want to put on a good 10 or so votes, I would have thought, at this stage.
Fascinating analysis there, Beth, talking about kind of the momentum, but also, of course, how the race could really be impacted by what happens today. We'll have much more of our political editor, Beth Rigby, as we count down to that vote. But in the meantime, before we go back to Beth, our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, here. Sam, we heard a bit from Beth about the key things she's going to be anticipating. What are you looking out for?
I mean, the first thing to say is with, 11 minutes to go, we could have a pretty good idea who's going to be Prime Minister of this country from the kind of results we get in 11 minutes, but I have no idea at this stage quite what's going to happen. There is still a path to Rishi Sunak facing Penny Mordaunt in the final, Rishi Sunak facing Liz Truss in the final, Penny Mordaunt facing Liz Truss in the final. Any of those are possible, we just don't know. The single number that I'm more interested in than anything else is how much support does Liz Truss have? as Beth was just mentioning, that was down at 50 yesterday. Perhaps given everything that's been talked over the days, weeks, months, years about her preparing for this moment, 50 MP backers out of 358 seemed a little small. Has her launch given her momentum? There are some that hope that Liz Truss, positioning herself as the true Brexiteer, can end up ultimately, when they're knocked out, if they're knocked out, picking up most of the votes from Kemi Badenoch and most of the votes from Suella Braverman. Now, if you add those three columns together, it's imperfect, people don't come as a block, but if you did, you get up to about 120, 125. They're hoping that at some point those votes come across. But the pressure today, the conversations up outside Committee Room 14, was trying to get some of that Braverman vote over to Liz Truss today to show momentum. We'll find out in a few moments. Both Braverman and Tugendhat sort of trying not to concede that either of their guys are out, but we will see. Very, very exciting at this point. No certainty either.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see. What is the sense that you're getting? I mean, I know it's quite difficult to call between the two people who are tussling it out to stay in, Suella Braverman and Tom Tugendhat. Are you getting any sense about how confident either of their camps are?
You're just hearing so much from different people at this stage. It's very, very hard to call. You can see why Tom Tugendhat would stay in the race, because he might get some of the Jeremy Hunt supporters. Jeremy Hunt, of course, went out yesterday. You could see why he might be ejected for some of the reasons that Beth was talking about. You can see why Suella Braverman might have picked up a bit of support, but also why some of that pressure from ERG members might go across. I'm told that Tom Tugendhat upset some One Nationers with the types of messages he was sending out last night when he was trying to attract those Jeremy Hunt supporters. I was given a very passionate case for the defence of Liz Truss at the expense of Suella Braverman by a very prominent Conservative barely an hour and a half ago in private. So huge, rather ugly starting arguments beginning. A lot of these campaigns begin quite statesmanlike with these big picture launches and everybody's friends. We are now at the really nasty bit where anything and everything is being thrown at individual MPs. I'm told of supporters of individual candidates turning up outside the offices of some of their colleagues to try and turn the screw. Hearing of MPs who publicly declaring for one candidate still being lobbied by rivals, in some cases even after they vote, in order to just try and hammer home that they need their support in future rounds. It's ugly, it's unpredictable, there's dissonance, there's disagreement. We'll know soon enough.
We certainly will. Less than 10 minutes to go now. Sam, thanks for your analysis. Talking there and echoing really what Beth was saying earlier about the devious electorate. We could never really trust where MPs are going to go, although, of course, in, I think, just to get the clock, about 8 minutes' time is when we're going to be hearing from Sir Graham Brady at that 1922 committee. Well, let's bring Beth Rigby, our political editor, back in. And Beth, I'm interested to know from you a sense of how the momentum has been in the race so far. You've been at so many of these launches now. You've been questioning the candidates in the different rooms that they've been choosing to launch their campaigns from. How do the different camps compare?
Well, I think Sam was spot on there, really, when he talked about the unpredictability of who is going to get into the final two. And hopefully we will get a bit more of a sense of that coming out of the second round ballot. But what has been surprising in this race, in a way, has been the way in which Penny Mordaunt, a dark horse, has kind of sprung into life in the past few days. She has been running a quiet campaign, lots of MPs tell me, for weeks and months. In the run-up to this being blown open. But if you always thought that Rishi Sunak was the favourite going into this just because of the MP support he had gathered, the fact that Liz Truss is trailing Penny Mordaunt will be very uncomfortable for a Foreign Secretary that's effectively had the government machine behind her, if you like, kind of promoting her on a world stage, and she's constantly on the screens, and she's been leading in terms of foreign policy on matters such as Ukraine, helping out the Prime Minister there. And yet when it came to the race actually kicking off, it was not Liz Truss that had the momentum to go up against Rishi Sunak, but actually Penny Mordaunt coming through. And as Sam was saying, if people keep saying to me who's going to win, and I say it's really unclear who's going to get to the final three at the moment. moment. It could be Penny Mordaunt, it could be Liz Truss. It's an expectation that Rishi Sunak will make it, but his team were telling me yesterday they're taking absolutely nothing for granted in this race. And then once you get to the final two, well, Penny Mordaunt is more popular with party members than the other two. So a Rishi Sunak Penny Mordaunt runoff, it's no clarity that Rishi Sunak could beat her. In fact, it would be money on for Penny Mordaunt to win that. That brings me to the next question, if we talk about skullduggery, which is when we get to the later stages of the race, if Rishi Sunak has got the votes that he needs, will he try and manipulate or lend votes, will his camp at least, to Liz Truss in order to block Penny Mordaunt? And that is how it gets towards the end of the race. So it's extremely unpredictable. The most sort of confident I would be in any of it is to say that Rishi Sunak looks like he will go through to the second round, through to the final two, if not because he's got a lot of cabinet backers, a lot of serious career politicians in the party think that he's the horse to back. But as for who becomes the next Prime Minister, it really is wide open, and it wasn't like that in 2019 with Boris Johnson. He was nailed on pretty much from the start, and it was similar with Theresa May back in 2016, which is what makes this race so fascinating, but I think it's also what makes this race so vicious.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually, that it is, as you say, such an interesting race where it's unpredictable. We don't know the outcome. But you mentioned there that it is vicious because candidates really are starting to scrap around for those all-important votes, aren't they? Are you feeling like some of the mudslinging may be a bit of a problem for some of the candidates going forward?
Well, I think that what was interesting at the Liz Truss launch today was that she was asked about Penny Mordaunt and Penny Mordaunt being a block on her. She was asked about some of the negative briefings. I mean, Lord Frost going on television to sort of openly criticise Penny Mordaunt as someone that wasn't up for the job. And Liz Truss said, I want to run a clean campaign. Penny Mordaunt said yesterday at her launch she wanted to run a clean campaign. But I think it's fair to say that you can see the guns are lining up on Penny Mordaunt at the moment. And why wouldn't they? She is the biggest threat to both Liz Truss not getting to the final two and then potentially to the Sunak camp because she could leapfrog over him. So, you know, it is getting more unpleasant. There have been lots of briefings against the Mordaunt camp in the past 24 hours. And I have to say, I think it will only get worse over the weekend. Although I have to say, Sophie, I bumped into Nadine Dorries at Liz Truss's launch, and afterwards we grabbed her a little, you know, we chased her down the road, a group of journalists, and we doorstepped her and asked her a few questions. And I asked her about the remarks she made about the allegations Rishi Sunak's camp had lent votes to Jeremy Hunt in order to get him through. And she talked about the kind of dirty tricks. I should say Rishi Sunak's camp denied that that is what they had done. But anyway, when I asked Nadine Dorries about it, she said, I don't want to now get into personal mudslinging or calling out different candidates. I want to focus solely on getting Liz Truss across the line. And it might be that some of the more public briefings against candidates, maybe that gets dialed back, because actually this parliamentary party is riven with division, and it might put some MPs off voting for candidates if other members, other senior MPs in their team are openly defenestrating colleagues. But even if the public mudslinging dials back, I have no doubt that over the weekend it is going to get very, very vicious, because this is the battle for the person not to just lead the Conservative Party, but to become the next Prime Minister of the country. And those who are now fighting it out want that job with everything they've got, and they will fight with everything they have to try and get themselves into pole position and knock out those who might thwart their bids.
It really does feel like we're getting to the business end of the contest, doesn't it? We're just looking at live pictures now of the committee room, where we are expecting the announcement of the results of that second Conservative Party leadership ballot imminently. One person will be eliminated today. There'll be more rounds of voting as the candidates are whittled down, and then the two final candidates will go to the party membership. You can see there MPs filling up the benches, perhaps slightly less than yesterday. It is a Thursday, I guess. Some of them may be voting and then heading straight back to their constituencies, but just awaiting the entrance of Sir Graham Brady, the chair of the 1922 committee, where he will be delivering the news. He's normally relatively punctual, so I think we should be getting that any moment now. It is now 3 o'clock, so this is the time when we are expecting the announcement of the results of the second leadership ballot to elect the next leader of the Conservative Party, but also the next Prime Minister as well. Beth, what are you going to be watching out for when Sir Graham Brady enters that room?
Well, I'll be watching out for the numbers. I mean, look, look, you can see all the MPs there, but in terms of what we're watching out for, we're watching out to see who gets knocked out, and then also where do the other votes move to. I think they're coming in. Shall we listen in?
Good afternoon. I'm going to announce the results of second ballot in the leadership election. As yesterday, I'll read the name of the candidate and the number of votes cast in each case. First of all, 350 cast out of a possible 358. Braverman, 27. Mordaunt, 83. Sunak, 101. Truss, 64. Tugendhat, 32. Therefore, under the rules, Suella Braverman is eliminated from the contest, and the others are able to go forward to a further ballot on Monday. Thank you.
To 27 today. You can see there Rishi Sunak clearing the 100 mark on 101. Penny Mordaunt in second place again on 83. Liz Truss on 64. Kemi Badenoch on 49, increasing her vote share there. And you can see there Tom Tugendhat just squeaking through on 32. His vote number going down to. Let's go to our political editor, Beth Rigby. What do you make of the results, Beth?
Well, that's an interesting set of results. Look, Braverman is out, so that is one candidate out, and she dropped votes. She went back 5. And Tom Tugendhat, he is still in there, but he's also lost votes. And you have to ask yourself, at this point, does Tom Tugendhat decide to fold? Now, sources around him insisted to me that that had not been a conversation that he was very keen to go into any live TV debates if he could. But let's see what Tom Tugendhat does. He's losing support. That is not where you want to be. But look at the main runners. Rishi Sunak has got over 100. He now is only 19 votes away from getting to that magic 120 figure, and he's put on 13 votes. So he's taken a chunk of that 43 that's split. Maybe not as much as he might have wanted, but anyway, look, he's over the 100 mark. What's interesting with Mordaunt is she's put on another, let me try and do the math, 16 votes. So she'll be happy with that. I think she's still in second place. She's gone up to the mid-80s or the low 80s. And Truss, I think what you can see there, she's put on 14 votes. She's still quite clearly trailing Mordaunt, not managing to close the gap. But isn't it interesting, Sophie, that Braverman lost 5 votes, and it seems to me that, as Sam was talking about earlier, that Suella Braverman, some of those candidates may be moving to try and bolster Liz Truss, but she's still clearly in third place. I mean, I think from those results, we have to see where the rest of those votes go. You would think that they would perhaps lean towards a Truss candidate rather than a Mordaunt candidate, given that Penny Mordaunt, whilst a conviction Brexiteer, is more progressively liberal on the sort of liberal conservative wing of the party when it comes to social policy. So I'm not sure Braverman supporters would think that Penny Mordaunt is their woman. But Mordaunt will be pleased with that. Sunak will be relieved to get over 100. And Truss there, she really does have to make up some ground. Because looking at those numbers, when we talk talk about whether Rishi Sunak can lend votes in order to block other people, you've got to be really comfortably over the 120 mark to risk in the later rounds lending votes out. I would say from that, Liz Truss looking in a bit of trouble as Penny Mordaunt becomes, after 2 rounds, the clear second favourite to Sunak.
Really interesting to see, as you say, Beth, there, the change in numbers compared to yesterday, really, I think, showing how the momentum is changing. Penny Mordaunt, actually the candidate putting on the most votes, she gained 16. Liz Truss up 14, Rishi Sunak up 13. So you can see where the votes are going. And as you were saying there, Beth, it feels like momentum is everything, with both Suella Braverman and Tom Tugendhat actually losing votes. I wonder, as the rounds progress, can you see Liz Truss potentially picking up more votes if you think that perhaps Suella Braverman and Kemi Badenoch could be the next 2 candidates to be eliminated, both people from the right of the party?
Yeah, so if you're doing, actually, let's talk a bit about Kemi Badenoch, because she is a former minister. But look at that. She's come in with 49 votes. She's going to be extremely pleased with that performance. She, in a way, has become another dark horse in the race on the right of the party, winning the patronage, the support of Michael Gove, a key backer for her. And she's come in at 49 in 4th place. But I guess the question is, as this goes along, do Badenoch backers and do Braverman backers go to Truss, and can she lift her numbers up? But they might also break for Rishi Sunak, because many people will think, MPs will now think, my first choice is out, I'm going to go for my second preference. Who is the one that's most likely to win? Who is the one that might put me back in their cabinet or might give me a job in government? And they could also break for Sunak. He, of that 43 votes that were going spare after Zahawi and Hunt were knocked out, Sunak's picked up 14 votes. He's got over 100. Truss has picked up 14 votes from the last round, but I imagine that she might have picked up some of those Braverman votes. And as for Tom Tugendhat, could it be as well that some of those backing Tom Tugendhat are now pushing into the Mordaunt column? She is well described.
I'll read the name of the candidate and the number of votes cast in each case. First of all, 356 votes were cast out of a possible 358. The numbers are as follows: Badenoch 49, Braverman 27, Mordaunt 83, Sunak 101, Truss 64, Tugendhat 32. Therefore, under the rules, Suella Braverman is eliminated contest, and the others are able to go forward to a further ballot on Monday.